Hey everyone, welcome to Taking the Pulse, a healthcare and life sciences video podcast. I am Heather Hoops Matthews here with Maynard Nexon healthcare attorney Lauren DeMoss. Lauren, good to be with you.
It's so great to be here, Heather.
And we are joining you live from SCbio's 2024 annual conference held this year in Greenville, South Carolina. It's one of the premier life sciences events in the Southeast, bringing together cutting-edge presentations and regional and national life sciences leaders. We are excited today, I say to have as a recovering journalist, to have a journalist join us. Adam Bruns is the editor-in-chief of Site Selection magazine, which has been around for a while, just a staple of economic development, really, in that industry. Circulated internationally, we're going to see it here in a minute. Adam, thanks for joining us today. Just give us a little bit of background on how you got into this.
How did I get into this? Well, I started using my writing degree in the 1990s when I was living in Lexington, Kentucky. About 10 years after I graduated. I did a lot of odd jobs with my poetry degree and started writing about business, economic development in all around Kentucky, and was asked to come on as managing editor down in Atlanta and made the move, and 22 years later, here I am.
Been there ever since.
Yes. Wow. Can you tell us a little more about Site Selection magazine and what it's doing in the life sciences industry?
Sure. We have a long legacy, first of all, if I could just talk about that for a second. We've been around since 1954, same year that two other publications started, Sports Illustrated and Playboy. They have both kind of gone by the wayside, especially lately with Sports Illustrated. And we are still here. We're still writing stories with humans writing them.
Yes.
And they're made of real conversations with business leaders. Our audience is the corporate end user, the company making the decision, and their corporate real estate management and team.
Yes.
Traditionally, we covered like legacy industrial development. For a long time, we were associated with manufacturing and industrial, but for decades now, we've covered life sciences and other sectors, looking at where projects go via a proprietary database we maintain called the Conway Projects Database, where we have a team qualifying projects to make sure they're real. If they involve at least $1 million invested, or at least 20 new jobs created, or at least 20,000 new square feet of space. It's all about trying to document where the dirt is turning and where the steel's going up.
How long have you been building and creating that database?
A little over 30 years.
Yeah.
So
okay.
We think it's a really good tool. We do actually offer it for subscription, but we use it also often in an index with other factors for our various rankings that we publish throughout the year. We're about to publish in our March issue our big Governor's Cup and top metros and top micropolitans rankings, which are the first chance to look at calendar year 2023 data.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that. Talk about site selection from your vantage point. Is it an art? Is it a science?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It really is both. And, the more people I interview after all these years, the more I learn that is true. First of all, you can discover a lot of data out there, publicly available data, that you can use to triangulate your way toward a location or toward a few finalist locations. But then it's amazing how many people you talk to, CEOs, company presidents, who say, I just had a good feel for the place. I mean, people who walk down Main Street here in Greenville get that feeling, right?
That's right.
And that influences the site selection consultants too, who work for these corporate end users. Kind of a side note is that, this area is known for its own cluster of site selection consultants that came out of the history of Fluor in this community. And so we've written about that too, about how Greenville doesn't have to go elsewhere to talk to site selection consultants. They have their own cluster of them.
And just look around and you can see all the global brands that are here.
That's right. Yeah, the foreign direct investment in this region, I've reported on it a lot over the years, and some special reports we call intelligence reports. And that FDI into this region has done so much and contributed to what like I say, is the feel of a place, not just the data from a place.
I agree.
So you mentioned kind of the feel of a place as being an intangible that you would look for. What are some other kind of key factors when you look at site development for life sciences?
Well, first of all, I should say that I'm a journalist documenting what other people think. I don't consult, we don't consult, but we talk to others who have thoughts on the subject. What they tell us, like in our annual survey, is number one, the top things are things like tax policy, both local and state tax policy. Workforce is consistently one or two when we ask what factors are most important in site selection. Then you have things like incentives, of course, which some people think are a terrible thing in all cases. But well thought out incentives that have clawbacks built in are often the appropriate thing to do, as your firm knows only too well. The other factors like quality of life, actually this year, our survey that we published in January, quality of life was number 4.
Really?
And I would say, especially pre-COVID, quality of life was not that high. And now, as operations disperse and people learn what they can or can't do in a remote fashion, quality of life is more important.
Yes. Well, I know you live in Alabama, but living here in South Carolina, we see a great influx of people looking for quality of life. Let's talk about life sciences industries, again, from your perspective as a journalist, I know, but you've written about medical devices, biotech, lots of subjects in this industry. Is there anything that makes it unique or different or stands out to you in comparison to other industries, like maybe manufacturing or something like that?
Well, as we're reminded almost at every turn, it involves saving people's lives. So maybe that kind of sparks your attention more than a widget.
Yes.
And it could be a very important widget. It makes me think, the first thing I think of is going down to Costa Rica once on a press trip and visiting some of the medical device plants that make the stents, for instance.
Yes.
And learning that actually parts of those, they test them with machines, but a lot of those are finely done by hand with literal handiwork. They are sewing animal tissue into these stents, and then they test them.
Yes.
And you realize that this was artisanal before artisanal became a thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so that's the first thing that you think of, is that this is literally saving lives, and also the other thing, of course, is the average pay
Yes.
is pretty substantially higher than most other professions. But it also, there's a good crossover with advanced manufacturing and other sectors that we cover. So it's interesting to see patterns in the data in terms of where projects land that are in proximity to other things. They always talk about bumping elbows and collaboration in the coffee room or in the hallways of an incubator or an accelerator. And that seems to also apply to life sciences more than almost any other sector.
I feel like the human component of life sciences, the patient, like you mentioned, you're helping people. I feel like that's been a common theme today. As we've talked to folks, no matter what they're kind of doing and how they touch the industry, it's that human component, which makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what's driving it, and some people that are really, really passionate about it.
That's right. It was interesting. One of my panelists today was saying how you define life sciences is important. And he was kind of he admitted it was a controversial statement that he said, healthcare and hospitals are not life sciences because they're not doing the science per se. I might slightly disagree with that, because when you talk to especially some of the research hospitals and you see all the different divisions that they're doing, sometimes all within one building. Montreal is a great example of this incredible life sciences ecosystem. And, I went into a neuroscience building there that was historic in terms of its heritage. And you had patients coming in one door, you had bioinformatics happening on the third floor, you had animal work being done in another wing.
Yes.
and it's all happening. So if a hospital is innovative, and we learned the other day in Charleston about MUSC and the work they're doing, both with their own real estate and what they're hoping to do soon. And we toured the Shawn Jenkins Children's Hospital and walked by the rooms and saw directly what's happening to influence these kids' lives and their families' lives. So it's a moving experience a lot of times, and it reminds you of why economic development is so important.
The why behind what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What makes South Carolina special in terms of growth of the life sciences industry? I know in your opinion, or as you've kind of gathered from your different resources.
It's interesting. At a luncheon yesterday, Mayor White here in Greenville spoke for a few minutes about what he's seen happen. And he's been governor for forever, it seems like. Mayor. But he spoke about the I-85 corridor, what one of my panelists today called the Charlanta corridor, although I would contend it goes to Raleigh and beyond. So,
True.
But I think that's a really important thing. Our offices and my home actually are in Peachtree Corners, Georgia, which is a little corner of Gwinnett County, a northeast suburb of Atlanta. And that's kind of where the I-85 corridor begins. And if you drive back and forth, like I have many times, to Raleigh, that you see that innovation taking shape across a bunch of industries, and life sciences among them. Right now, about a mile from our offices in Peachtree Corners, over the past year and a half, we've seen taking shape a $500 million campus from Intuitive Surgical, the makers of the Da Vinci surgical robots. And so you see how such a project influences, again, people moving into the area, average prices for homes,
Right.
what it's going to do to the infrastructure in and around this incredible site where they're going to be bringing in surgeons from around the world to showcase their technology and train them. It can be a really profound thing that can influence a region as much as an automotive plant.
Mm-hmm. Close us up by telling us a little bit about Site Selection Magazine. If our people are unfamiliar with it, what can they expect to read in your magazine? And then also, if you're looking for stories, ideas, what are you looking for that someone might be able to reach out and say, hey, I have an idea?
Well, thank you. First of all, I'll show the cover. This is actually a cover Richard Nenoff, one of our lead designers, designed.
That is
for our September issue.
Yes.
This is a ranking we do that combines our project data with infrastructure project data and is therefore able to evaluate top countries, states, and metro areas on combined corporate end user and infrastructure investment. Basically, what's creating an ecosystem for prosperity. We go to about 41,000 corporate end users globally, with mostly multinationals. Now, I will say, even just in my 22 of our 70 years of existence, I've seen a lot more interest in our content from startup founders, from every level of C-suite officer. It used to be a departmental head, like a director of global corporate real estate and facilities, which is still our core of our audience.
Sure.
But I think it's of wider appeal, and it's always interesting because it's even interesting to me, having written thousands of stories every time, because every project story is unique in terms of the circumstances that led to it, the strategy, the timeline, what's happening in the world around us. It's not just confined to some corporate exercise that's really dry and analytical all the time. There's a lot of drama inherent in some of these stories. We were just talking about the Hyundai plant that's going, what they call the Meta plant, that's going along I-16 in Georgia. And, there was a little intrigue about who it was. I don't know how they try to keep it quiet when it's such a huge, huge project. And the economic developers in Savannah, one of the guys visiting had a Hyundai backpack on. Kind of a dead giveaway, right?
Right.
Yes.
That's a good journalist right there.
That's right. Yes.
And so after it all happened and was announced and everything, one of the gifts that they gave to the Hyundai executives after the announcement ceremony was a watercolor painting of him walking down River Street in Savannah with that backpack slung over his shoulder.
Yes. Yes, what a reminder.
But we're looking for stories
Yes.
all the time, and for original interviews, which is very important. Conversations is what I like to say. One of my first columns as editor-in-chief was like, we're centered around conversations. We want to have conversations, candid ones, with business leaders, with founders, with government leaders, with governors and mayors about the challenges in a site selection process, maybe who the runners-up were and why they were runners-up, as well as the reasons that they chose a particular place for a manufacturing plant or a corporate headquarters, a data center, any type of corporate facility investment.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here at SCbio.
I am too.
Right?
It's a great event. I've been to my share of events, and this one, you say it's one of the biggest in the Southeast. I'd say it's one of the best in the country from what I've seen.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Adam Bruns, on behalf of our Taking the Pulse team, thank you for joining us today. You're editor-in-chief of Site Selection Magazine. If you're unfamiliar with that magazine, this is a good time to check it out online or in print. On behalf of Lauren and our team, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hope you're learning more about South Carolina and the life sciences industry, and we look forward to seeing you next time right here on Taking the Pulse, a healthcare and life sciences video podcast.